I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Yeah, take a step back for the ones who can't do that.
Hello there, travelers. It's 2025. Welcome to a brand new year. Guys, what the F? Can you believe it? I can't, honestly. I feel like 2024 went by so fast, but also so long at the same time. Can both those things be true? I think so. When you're listening to this, it might even be later. Who knows? You might be a listener who stumbles upon this episode, years from now. Because I know that happens. I know that happens. Y'all do that. And that is one of the reasons why I freaking love podcasts, because I'll have listeners that go back to the very beginning of the show. They binge the show from the beginning of all time. And I kind of love it because I can always tell when that's happening. When I look at my podcast or the podcast stats, I'll be like, oh, why did this episode get a random listen? And then I can see somebody go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and go up the episode list, which is really fun to see that happening. So if that's you, and if you're listening to it later, this episode still very much applies. Just sorry I didn't catch you in time. But what I'm going to share with you here today, of course, it applies to manifesting all your desires for 2025. That's the purpose. But it can truly be applied to any year. In fact, it can be really applied to any time of year too. So I think a lot of times we fall into this kind of like New Year's resolution kind of trap, which I'm not a huge fan of. I used to be like a super duper New Year's resolution girl. Like I would come up with 100 goals for the year. And it was a fun little game to play. I had this like cool little spreadsheet that I filled out, and my husband made it all like interactive because he's like an Excel wizard. But I don't really do that anymore because I don't know. It just felt so pushy. It just felt so efforty. And I take a much more relaxed approach these days. I still love having manifestations and having goals and having things that I'm working towards, obviously, but it doesn't need to be this like regimented process. And I think that's what you're going to find about a lot of what I'm going to share today is a softer approach to manifesting everything that you want, because you can still receive everything that you want. And it's only going to be hard if you believe it needs to be hard to get there. And I want to prove to you that you don't have to have that belief. You can decide there's another way. But even though we fall into this kind of like, I'm not even going to call it a trap, but we fall into this sort of expectation that the new year is the time where we decide to kind of chart what we're going to do in the next year ahead. A lot of us feel that sort of fresh start feeling at the beginning of January. Others might not find themselves motivated to approach this until maybe your birthday. Birthdays are a great time to kind of chart a new year. Or maybe it's even the school year. Maybe if you're a student still in school, or if you have kids in school, like I'm just throwing this out there for you because there's so many different ways that we in our physical 3D reality that we use to mark time. And so a year, think about it. A year is just kind of an arbitrary way of marking time. It's 365 days. We've just decided, I get why we do it, right? The cycles of the sun around the earth and this and that, right? Like I get why we have years, but I just want to kind of point out to you that as you look at the year ahead, doing sort of exercises like we're going to do today can be a useful tool when it comes to becoming more intentional about what we want to manifest. And I want big, beautiful things for you this year. Like, I want you to kind of picture me. If you're watching the video, you can see me, but I'm like Drew Barrymore style. I'm all up in your business here. She's known for being like touchy-feely on her show, right? But I want you to picture me just reaching out, holding your hand, looking you in the eye and saying, this year is your year. So what do you want to do with it? And that's a very valuable question. In fact, I kind of skipped over that part a little bit when it comes to what we're talking about, because I guess I just sort of assume that as you think about a new year, you're going to ask yourself, what do you want to do with it? But that's kind of the very first step here. What do you want to do with this next chunk of time here that we're looking at? Now, I fully recognize that you've probably had high hopes for your year in the past. And maybe those hopes panned out. Maybe they didn't. Okay. I mean, think of it this way. Think about, if you remember, putting yourself back in your shoes back in January 2020. Isn't it so funny? I should go back in my old journals, or I don't even know if I did anything planning that year, but I kind of would love to look back at all the plans I made January 1st, 2020, right before the pandemic, right? We created all these kind of wild visions for what we thought the year was going to be, entering into the 2020s. And yet we all had zero idea that merely 2 months later, life as we knew it would completely change. And here we are 5 years later from that. And I don't know about you, but I still use the pandemic as kind of this marker in time. Like there was pre-pandemic and there's post-pandemic, and the post-pandemic is just getting larger and larger in time. But it's kind of crazy how monumental that was, right? To our lives and our concepts of time. So I understand if you feel hesitant, if you feel resistant to feeling hopeful for a new year. In fact, depending on your American political affiliation, Trump, sorry, just threw up a little bit. Trump, soon to be president. Yeah. And you might have some certain feelings about 2025 in a really strong way. I think especially why'd they have to name, this is just me ranting, but why'd they have to name that thing Project 2025? See, that's what I don't like. I'm like, oh, why'd you have to name that awful article Project 2025? Now you've branded 2025 by that stuff. No, we need to rebrand 2025 for what we want it to be, right? So I get what it feels like to have entered into a new year with all this hope, all these big dreams, and then have that year turn out to be less than ideal, right? Last year, 2024, for me, I would say objectively, it was the worst and simultaneously the best year of my life so far. I didn't know those two things could exist in one year. That's why a year is just arbitrary, right? I had 3 miscarriages in the course of a year. There was so much grief, so many pregnancy hormones. I literally spent a good chunk of the year in the first trimester. But there was also so much strength. There was so much spiritual connection. There was so much resilience that I somehow pulled out of myself that I didn't even know could exist within me. And it's always, as someone who, makes a living helping others self-reflect and doing a lot of self-reflection myself, I'm always super surprised when I learn or uncover something new, because it's just wow, I didn't know I could be that strong. And yet here I was, right? And simultaneously, a big, amazing manifestation that has developed here over the last couple months. I mentioned it the last episode. I promise I'm not just teasing you guys. I know I am very forthright with you all in my manifestations. I like to share the journey. I like to share the ups and the downs. I promise I plan on sharing this with you in a very big way. I just kind of want to let the story unfold a little bit so I can tell you how exactly I did it. I want to get really clear on that part before I share it with you so that it can be helpful for you, right? Sorry, I keep pulling at my bangs. I got my bangs trimmed today, if you're watching the video, but it's a little wonky, but they look nice. Anyways, so I will share that with you very soon, but that definitely helped to redeem 2024 in a really big way. So I get it. There are a lot of unknowns when we embark on manifesting the best year of your life at the very start of a brand new year or start at a brand new time that you're marking that year. But I want you to learn and start to integrate that those unknowns aren't necessarily scary. And it's by deliberately manifesting that you can make the unknown become known, right? So also, an extra special little thing I want to offer here at the end of this episode, I want to give you the absolute best tool I have. Like literally, if we were to open my toolkit and look at the best one here, I want to give that to you. It's the best tool I have for manifesting an amazing 2025. I created what I'm going to give you as a bonus, kind of little holiday gift for my one-on-one clients. They loved it. And it made me think, oh gosh, maybe I should also gift it to other people that I really admire and want to say thank you to, which are listeners of the show. So it is quite literally the perfect manifestation hypnotherapy audio. It's better than any other audio I've ever created. It's full length. It's 30 minutes. It will help you manifest exactly what you desire in 2025 if you use it. It's pure gold. Like, I should seriously be charging at least $100 for it. To be completely honest, like the business owner in me is like, yep, that's very valuable. It's super powerful. It's worth it. But I'm serious when I say, like, the other like non-business part of me and like human part of me is like, I want you to manifest your best year yet. And so I'm making this audio completely free. For now. The business part of me might win out, but I will tell you how to access it at the end of this episode, right? So let's just go ahead and jump in how to manifest your best year yet in 2025. First of all, the first thing you need to internalize and know so very deeply within you in order to manifest 2025 as your best year yet is you have to realize that the word unknown, is not a scary word. Now, I have a funny story for you for why this is so important. So I don't know if you recall, if you're a listener of the show, I'm sure I mentioned it. This past year, back in August 2024, I went to a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation retreat and a week-long advanced meditation retreat. I probably mentioned it at some point. I wish I would have back then done like a really deep dive right after it because there was so much that I learned from it that just like blew my mind. It was freaking magical. Like I can't say if I would recommend it. I mean, it was life-changing, so yes. But the main reason why I wouldn't recommend it and why I probably won't ever go again, even though it makes me so very sad, is I caught the worst bout of COVID you could ever imagine. I was so sick for like 6 weeks. It like lasted a really long time. I had to leave the retreat early, which was a bummer because it was very expensive. And, it just kind of was like, well, duh, wouldn't you know, 2,000 people in a hotel ballroom, all deep breathing for hours on end isn't the best idea. And I just think the way that he structures the retreat, there's some outside time, but it's not enough outside time. If somebody's got COVID in that room, you're done for. So that's unfortunate. Like everyone was coughing by the end of the retreat, or at least when I left, and I had such a bad fever. It was so bad. So that would be the only reason why I wouldn't recommend it. Just, but I guess if you really don't get COVID at all or get sick ever and it's worth it, then do that. But I would say it was phenomenal in terms of my manifesting. I believe it was a huge contributor to the manifestations I let in the later half of this year. And there is something really to be said about, receding from the outside world, right? Which is what you do when you enter into retreat. It's very similar to what you do during hypnotherapy, is that you say, okay, 3D reality around me, I'm going to step away for a bit. That's what we do when we close our eyes in hypnotherapy. But at a retreat setting, you do the same with your day-to-day life, right? You retreat. That's why it's called a retreat. You retreat from your day-to-day life so that you can focus on something different. You can create something different. But if you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, I talk about it all the time here on the show, he has a particular method of relaxing you out of your 3D reality and into the 4D reality of the unknown. And from there, you enter into the 5D reality of all potentiality. So if you're like, what the F are you talking about, Brittany? Let me break this down for you, okay? Because it can be a little tricky to understand at first. I know while he explained it at the retreat, I was like, oh, my mind was like blown, right? So 3D reality is made out of our physical matter, right? It's where you're sitting right now or listening to the show. Maybe you're walking. I don't know what you're doing. You can see the physical 3D reality around you. You're in it right now. Lean over, touch your finger to something around you. That's 3D. Now, 4D is where you enter the space of no thing, no one, nowhere. And how do you do that? Well, you close your eyes, like I was talking about before, right? You close your eyes, you let go of thought, you relax, and you ease into the nothingness of a clear mind, right? Hypnotherapy is a great tool that can move you from noticing all the things outside of you, which is the 3D, to putting a barrier between that, saying, nope, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to focus inwards and I'm going to clear what is there. Traditional meditation, we would consider kind of 4D, right? It moves you into the 4D. And so once you have that blank, clear slate of the 4D, no thought, no image, you're not seeing anything with your physical eyes, it's a blank slate. That's when you access 5D. And that's the reality and the realm of everything, everyone, everywhere, right? Kind of like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? The 5D is the realm of all potentiality, where every permutation of reality that could possibly exist, it can exist there in your mind, including every single one of your manifestations. That's why we love to be there, right? It's where it all resides once you've cleared the slate of your mind in the 4D, and then you deliberately create through visualization and other tools what you want to impress upon your subconscious mind in the 5D. Okay? This is just my own interpretation, but this is kind of the visual image that would come up for me when I was accessing the 5D in my hypnosis sessions, my hypnotic meditations, right? I almost picture the 5D as this like infinite roll of bubble wrap. I don't know. That's how it appeared to me, right? That's how my subconscious mind saw it. This infinite roll of bubble wrap. And I almost imagine every single outcome that could ever be, every single manifestation, every single fear, every single anything, right? All permutations of reality are like individual little bubbles on that bubble wrap. And so what we do when we enter hypnosis or hypnotic meditation is that we look at that never-ending expanse of bubble wrap, and then we deliberately say, okay, which bubble do I want to pop? Like, where do I want to give my energy and focus and attention and pop the bubble of which I want to create? Because once I pop that bubble in the 5D in my inner mind, it then impresses it on my subconscious mind, which then creates it in my 3D, which is the reality that we humans live in. And so what you manifest and what you impress upon the 5D, it sends the instructions to the 3D of what's going to be created. And of course, we know oftentimes, depending on your resistance to this and your belief in this, there may or may not be a lag time between when you impress your subconscious mind and when you manifest the thing. The lag time could be years. The lag time could be seconds. It really depends. It depends on so many different factors, right? So you can access that space with your subconscious mind using hypnotherapy. The goal is to get into the 5D, right? So then we can then give our attention and our energy and our focus to those potentialities, to those little bubbles on the bubble wrap that we want to manifest into the 3D. But you sort of have this bridge of the 4D that you have to traverse through first, right? To get from 3D to 5D. Well, Dr. Joe Dispenza describes the 4D as entering the unknown. So 3D is known, right? It's physical matter. It's already here. Spoiler alert. It is what it is, right? It's already been manifested. It's already been created. That's why it's physical. That's why it's 3D. And so when you place your attention off of the 3D and onto the clear slate of a clear mind, there's nothing there. You enter the unknown. 3D is known, 4D is unknown. And so when I first did one of his meditations at this retreat, which you guys know, he calls them meditations. I've said this multiple times on the show. I always have to clarify. What you're actually doing is considered hypnotherapy. He just doesn't use that particular language for some reason. But what is happening in your brain is the theta brainwave state, which is the state that you access going into hypnosis. But when I was doing one of his hypnotic meditations and he first said to venture into the unknown, I will admit there was this like small little conscious part of my mind that was still kind of slightly in the background, slightly online, that was like, judging him. And I don't really know why. I was just being like, why is he using such a word with such a negative connotation, like unknown? Like, like he really shouldn't use that word. And my little judgy hypnotherapist teacher analytical part of me came out to play there for a second and was kind of like analyzing, like, why is he using that word? Wouldn't people take that word negatively? Like, that's an unhelpful word, especially since hypnosis is so specific in the words that you use and how you can, use them for change, right? But then this is so interesting because as the retreat progressed, as we went along the week and we did more and more, I mean, gosh, some of our hypnotic meditations lasted like 6 hours. Like it was crazy. Maybe 5 hours. I can't remember now. It was a blur. I think it was 5 hours. And most of them were like 2 to 3 hours, which was nuts. But as we spent more and more time in the 4D and in the 5D, we spent more and more time giving up our attention to our 3D reality, the physical world around us. And as I closed my eyes and quieted my mind and allowed myself to go into this blank space sort of place where there was no thought, no form, no judgment, no expectations, where none of that existed, I became more familiar with the unknown. I became more familiar, and therefore it felt safer to go into this space within me that was made up of nothing, where it existed nowhere. It inhabited no time. It was ever present. It was ever expansive. And as I rested in that space, I had this huge aha moment that made, the word unknown so worth it. I realized that the unknown, meaning that which is not yet known because it's not yet 3D around you in the physical reality, that isn't inherently scary. It just is. It's your thought about it. It's what you project onto that blank screen in your mind that makes it scary or not. And so if you've ever dealt with anxiety, if you have ever dealt with fear about the future, fear about your manifestations, that's what you're doing. You're taking that blank slate of the 4D of the unknown, literally something that is defined by your not knowing. And then you're assuming that you do know, that it is known, and that it's scary, or that it's not going to work out, or that it's bad, or whatever known you're projecting that fear to be. You're projecting a fearful known onto that unknown future. And so when you think about the year 2025 up ahead, we can all agree from where we sit right now, there's a lot of unknown. There just is. It's early January. We have the rest of this month, and then we have all the 11 months following that comprise this year. That's a lot of unknown. That's a lot of time that is yet to be traversed in our 3D reality. But the unknown is purely a blank slate in which we have to work with. We get to create and decide what we're going to project onto it. And that's us moving into the 5D. That's saying, okay, if I let this be unknown right now, that means that any reality can exist here. That's like the full sheet of bubble wrap that you haven't punched in yet, right? Like anything can exist. So what do I want to create? This is another analogy that I always love. Abraham Hicks uses this analogy a lot of molding the clay, right? So I want you to think about the rest of 2025. It's just like this block of clay for you to mold. Now, the block of clay at the beginning of the year, it's going to come as a gray little square package, right? Just straight out of the package. That's the unknown. You have zero clue what this clay could be in its original unknown form, right? But the thing with clay is that it doesn't stay that way. No, with your deliberate intention, you mold that clay. You decide out of the infinite potentialities of shapes and objects and colors you could paint it and ways that you could fire it in a kiln and all the different things that you could do with this clay, all the different things it could become. You mold it into the form that you desire. That's deliberate manifestation. That's playing around in the 5D. But to get there, you have to let the block of clay be the block of clay without jumping to false conclusions, false knowns at first. You have to see the possibility that exists in that clay rather than assuming the worst from the very start. And that's important to internalize and understand as you gaze upon what is the blank slate, the unknown of 2025. Unknown does not automatically mean scary. There's no scary connotation attached to that word. Unknown is simply not yet known. And it's by your attention to what you want that you allow it to become known. Yes. Just let that sink in for a moment, because that was like a huge aha moment for me once I realized that. Okay? So, piggybacking off of that leads me to my next point when it comes to manifesting your best year yet, okay? You want to allow yourself to have hope. So one of my main mantras this past year, one of the thoughts that has gotten me the most bang for my buck this year and has helped me get through this year the most, and something I'm sure I'm going to be talking about as I share some of these latest developments in my own personal manifestations here. But the thought is faith, not fear, right? So when you stare at that unknown, that blank piece of clay that is 2025, I want you to see its potential for good. I want you to give yourself permission to be hopeful, to have faith about the realization of that good, of that potentiality that exists. Because to assume the unknown is known with fear and doubt is to create then an environment that matches that vibration. And that's not what you want to do. That's you to say, you know what? I just know this is going to turn out bad. So I'm going to punch the little bubble of fear and doubt and this not working out. And then that's created in your 3D reality. And you think it's created in your 3D reality because it was just inevitable, but it's actually only created in your 3D reality because you gave your attention to it. You decided to create it. You decided to make it known. And I want you to realize your power here. Stop giving up your power. I want you to be deliberate about these things. In manifestation, our job is to make unknowns known. It's through our attention and our energy and our focus. So if you don't want to create fear, don't assume an unknown is comprised of it. I feel like I learned this lesson in a really big way this year, okay? It is easier said than done, and I will just say that. When I was pregnant with the twins this past summer, which, by the way, my due date for the twins would have been last week, which was definitely a bittersweet moment. But when I was pregnant with our twins, my body just knew something was off. It just knew that something was wrong, right? Like it was the best way I can describe it is it was like the deepest sense of like intuition and spiritual connection that I've ever experienced in my life. I don't know if I'll ever experience something like that again. I just had this extreme amount of anxiety around it. And a lot of times it was completely unfounded. And it was very confusing for me because I didn't know why things felt so off. I just pretty much worried nonstop throughout the 10 weeks of that pregnancy. So if there was an award, which there's not, so don't vie for it, okay? But if there was an award for how many hours you could spend worrying and being anxious about, how things for that, I would win the gold medal. I put that to the ultimate test. And you know what I discovered? There is zero amount of worry and anxiety that can prevent bad things from happening. In fact, worry and anxiety lower your vibration. It makes you a greater match for those things. It doesn't prevent anything. I think a lot of times we can get into this magical thinking of like, oh, if I worry and if I come up with every single outcome, then that will prevent the bad thing. The exact opposite is true. So I am so thankful for learning that lesson. I hate how it had to come about. Like, universe, if you could have let me choose how to learn that lesson, would have very much preferred it to come about in a different way, but I'm thankful for learning it. Because now, whenever I feel my monkey conscious, and sometimes my subconscious mind, if I haven't reprogrammed it yet, whenever I feel my monkey mind trying to venture off into fear or anxiety about something, I stop myself. And I've been really good about that. I remind myself that I've already tested that route. I've already gone there, and it's not a good place to go. Fear and anxiety doesn't keep you safe in the way that you think it will. It just simply doesn't, folks. Unless a physical lion is actually chasing you and your biological fear mechanisms kick in the way that they were designed, it doesn't actually keep you safe. Not in our modern world. Not in the way most of us feel it would in relation to our manifestations and our dreams. It doesn't work. It's not the vibration that matches your desires for 2025. I doubt any of you are like, you know what? I think 2025 is going to be my fear year. Yeah, my word of the year is fear. Like, I doubt it. And if you are, I don't know, I'd like to talk to you because I don't think any of us are doing that, right? Think of it this way. Manifested you. That is the version of you who is currently enjoying the outcomes that you desire, right? We think of that person in the future, but actually that version of you exists in the 5D all at once. That version of you is happening just like the past version of you is happening, and it's all at once because there is no concept of time in the 5D. But we, when we're in our 3D physical bodies, we experience it as our future. So that manifested you. They don't feel fear or worry or anxiety about manifesting those outcomes. They just don't. Why would they? They already have the outcome. There's no need to fear not having something you already have. And that's their reality. So those emotions of fear and anxiety and worry are not part of their vibration. So when those emotions are a part of your vibration, it virtually ensures that you're no longer a match to those outcomes that you want. You're not the same. You and manifested you are different because they don't worry, and yet you in your physical 3D reality is worrying. You're no longer a match, which ensures you're no longer a match to the thing that you want to manifest. So instead, here's the solution. Allow yourself to have hope. I remember when I told my sister about the miscarriages of the twins, she just said the oddest thing to me. And she said, "Oh, Brittany, I'm so sad for you. You'll never be able to have this naive, hopeful pregnancy." And, I wasn't offended, but I was just perplexed by that sentence. Like, she assumed, because that sentence told me so much more about her mindset about it than it had anything to do with me. She assumed that because this awful thing that had happened to me the first time I was pregnant, that if I were to ever become pregnant again, that meant I needed to be scared and fearful, and I just simply couldn't enjoy the hope of a new opportunity. Like, that's what she thought this meant for me, and was telling me that this is what it meant for me. like that outcome had officially been stolen from me, given my past, and now it was going to apply for all time. And you guys know me, right? Like, that absolutely rubbed me the wrong way, because in fact, if anyone tells me that I can't be hopeful, you better bet that I'm going to find a way to do just that, right? I don't like being told what to do. So I've taken the opposite of that advice with me. Like, I look for hope everywhere, because when you look for it, you find it. When you don't find it is when you aren't looking. If you aren't finding a hopeful situation around you, I will tell you it's because you're not looking hard enough. It's there if you look for it. In fact, your brains are designed to filter it. If you say, show me something good today, your brain will show you something good. Like your brain filters based on the instructions that you give it. So I look for hope everywhere. I lead by faith. I make decisions from faith, not fear. Not only baby-related things, but just like everyday life things, right? I consider all potentialities, that's the 5D, and then I hone in on those I want to create, and I give my attention to those. I pop the bubbles only of those things that I want more of, right? I invest my emotional energy just in those cups or those bubbles. Now, do I always do this? Didn't do it with the twin pregnancy. Nope, remember? I was all in fear and anxiety, and that didn't work. Doing something different now, right? I've already tested the other way. It doesn't work. Spoiler alert, you listening here don't have to test it. I've tested it for you. Fear and anxiety doesn't make any situation any better, other than maybe running from that lion. If you're running from the lion, fine, do it then. But I trust that your natural instincts would actually kick in if you needed fear in that kind of scenario, right? So when it comes to your manifestations, allow yourself to pour your energy into something like hope and faith, because it's a far better vibrational match to your desired outcomes than fear ever could be. Live from faith, not fear. It's a whole new and different set of outcomes that are created from a space of faith compared to a space of fear. Now, if you know the unknown is neutral, like we've already established, and you bring that sense of hope to that neutrality, you got that blank slate, and now you're infusing hope onto the blank slate in order to create those things in which you desire, what do you do next? Well, we already talked about you set your intentions. I guess that's technically the very first thing. You decide what you want. That's honing in on what you want 2025 to be, right? Then what? Well, the last thing you do is you let it go. And you allow yourself to be in your simple joys. So a few weeks ago, I think I mentioned this on the podcast episode. I literally asked myself, I was like, I thought back kind of through my life so far, and I identified those moments in time, those specific years or like summers or whatever it was, right? Those seasons that have been kind of the best times of my life. The years where I manifested meeting my now husband, when we got married, manifesting our dream home, manifesting my business, like manifesting being on Big Brother, right? That was a huge dream of mine. I kind of look back at those like best highlight moments. I literally charted those moments across the years, and I asked myself, kind of like a detective, I was like, what happened right before those big manifestations? Because my thought process was, if I could recreate or notice some sort of pattern of what happens right before, then I could better recreate big manifestations on demand, right? There's going to be something there. And those big moments right before the manifestation, I was right. They did share the most surprising quality. It was a quality that I hadn't really been able to see before I kind of dug deep into it. I wasn't focused on the huge manifestation. No, I was focused on my simple joy. The memories I have of those times were filled with brunch dates with my friends, or coloring in adult coloring books in the evenings instead of binging gory TV programs, or going on little weekend trips, or taking goofy pictures with my loved ones. Like, it was filled with all these micro moments that we usually don't plan out or intend when we think about manifesting for the new year. Like, I bet if you're like major goal setting right now, you're thinking of kind of like big accomplishments, like a promotion at work or earning a certain amount of money or like these big things. I'm sure you're not just like, oh, I want to, color that one sheet in my coloring book this year. Like you kind of just bet that those things will happen. You don't make room for them or time for them. But these are the glorious moments that we often take for granted and that we don't plan for. And I'm telling you, these moments are gold. Okay? They're the key. And once I realized this, I was like, duh, it makes so much sense, because these moments are the result of your alignment. Or perhaps it might even be the other way around, right? It's because you dedicate time to these small joys. It's that creates the alignment that then allows the big joys to swoop on in, those big manifestations. So when we talk about the law of detachment, right, I think that's what this feels like, right? So we already set the intention for the big juicy goal, right? And then we're no longer hyper fixated on the outcome of that big miracle that we want to manifest for 2025. We let it go. We've already set that. We've already determined it. The universe already knows it. And of course, we always will take inspired action towards it when we feel called to. But otherwise, we just focus on the small joys. Okay? Because the small joys aren't so small. They play a huge role in your manifestations. Here's an example. I just took up watercolor painting. Yeah, and I'm actually pretty decent at it. I freaking love it. It's so much fun. I can't remember the last time I did a hobby, like in my evening time by myself, that wasn't hanging out with my husband or watching TV or doing more work, right? Like, I haven't had a hobby like forever because for so long, my work was my hobby until I made it full time. And now I just do it all the time because I love it. But like, I haven't had a hobby that wasn't like manifestation related in a really long time. So I love this. It's a small joy. It's alignment to me. What are your small joys? Maybe it's listening to your favorite music. Maybe it's getting in a good workout. Maybe it's playing with your niece or your nephew, watching them giggle and laugh uncontrollably. Like, it's so cliche, but like, guys, this is it. This is what makes life so precious. And I'm urging you to enjoy more of these moments. I want you to see, not only are they fun, but there's a lot of productivity in them because not only do they feel good to live through, but they align you to your bigger manifestations. They have more utility and more purpose than you may think. And so I don't want you to just kind of brush them off to the side and think, oh, I have bigger things to think about. Then you're doing yourself a disservice because it's actually by doing the small things that will allow the big things. So I have one last thing for you that's going to help kind of bring all of this together as you manifest your best year yet in 2025, okay? This last one is a lot more tactical. What if you could do something that classifies as a simple joy, meaning that it's fun to do, it's enjoyable, it's relaxing, right? But it also facilitates that movement from your 3D physical reality to the 4D blank slate of the unknown, to the 5D of all potentiality. And once you get to the 5D, then you hone in on what 2025 will look like for you, right? You pop those bubbles of what you want 2025 to include. You create it in your mind, and then you infuse that picture with so much faith and so much hope, and you erase all fear. What if there was a mechanism to facilitate this whole process for you all at the same time? Bring it all together. Well, I mentioned it at the start of the episode. There is, guys. There is. It's my free ultimate manifestation hypnotherapy audio that I created for you. Okay, so let me tell you a little story about how this audio came to be. Okay, so I was reading all of Neville Goddard's books, his anthology, right? The collection of all his works. And I was obviously noticing kind of a lot of the same themes come up. A lot of his books are quite repetitive. And I would say rightfully so, right? The subconscious mind craves repetition, so I get it. But I was thinking about what I learned from him, and I was thinking about the law of assumption and other teachers of the law of attraction that I've read, and taking essentially everything that I've learned about manifestation over the past 17 years. And I asked myself, okay, Brittany, if you only had 30 minutes each day to deliberately dedicate towards manifestation, and everything else you were just going to give to your simple joys, as much as humanly possible, right? Like, you might have to occasionally do some chores. Although I would say for me at this point, we either hire out most of those or my absolutely amazing, lovely husband handles most of the chores around our house for me, which is like the most amazing, beautiful, loving thing ever. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm aware I'm a very fortunate gal. Most of my life is either working or simple joys. But I wanted to ask myself, what would give me the most bang for my buck in terms of deliberate manifestation process and practice? And so I sat down. I really wanted to solve this. And I just started writing a hypnotherapy audio that included all the major things I'd want to practice in the 5D each day to manifest. And then I used that audio. I started using it daily, right? I used it to manifest some really amazing things. Big Brother, my business, this big manifestation that I keep teasing you all about, and I promise to share with you very soon, right? But it's my best manifestation to date. So all of it, I used all of it, deliberately created it through the use of this audio. And I used it for myself for, several years. And then one day I just got thinking, I was like, why am I not sharing this with other people? I don't know. It just kind of slipped my mind. It just kind of seemed like something for me. And I kind of forgot that other people could use it really, could find it very useful. So I decided that I am. I want you to download it and I want you to apply it to your 2025. I want you to envision what 2025 is going to be like for you. Manifested you, 2025 version of you, the version of you who has what you want to have and whose prayers are answered this year. Spend some time being her or him in your mind. And if you've had, I was going to say if you've had the privilege, that's putting me on too much of a pedestal. If you have had the opportunity to experience one of my hypnosis manifestation audio recordings in the past, thank you for your support. But I also want to point out that this one is way different and way deeper. So don't just say, oh, I already have that. You don't already have it. Unless you were on my email list, you may still already have it. But this is a new one, okay? This is the Mac Daddy recording. And because of that, I could genuinely see myself putting it behind a paywall someday because it's super valuable. Who wouldn't, right? Simply because of the value that it provides. But that day isn't today, okay? Not yet, if you're listening to this episode live. So for a limited time, I want you to grab my Ultimate Manifestation Hypnotherapy audio freebie. I want you to start aligning your mind with it tonight. So head over to brittanyhoops.com/audio. Or, of course, I'll always link it in the show notes to this episode. You can find the link. You can grab it. Start venturing into the unknown and then make it known to you in the best way possible. Make it become exactly what you want it to be in 2025. And then infuse it with the power, the vibration of your hope. And then once you finish the recording, let it go, right? Go out there, enjoy your life, create some simple joy, find reasons to laugh and be a goofball and trust that you can visit the 5D whenever you like. In fact, I suggest you visit Manifested You daily. Listen to the recording every day, even twice a day if you're a star student. This is how we deliberately create using our subconscious minds. I can't wait to find out what you create in 2025. I just know it's going to be your best year yet. I don't know. I just feel it. It's just a vibration. I feel it. I know it's going to surprise and delight you in so many amazing ways. So be sure to keep me updated throughout the year. You can always let me know how things are going by leaving a review of the podcast. Let me know what you manifest as a result of what you learn here on the show. And I'm wishing you all the beauty, all the hope, all the love in the world for 2025. I'll catch you next week.
I don't know. I don't know.